What if I told you there's an $18 chimney sitting on hardware store shelves right now that can pull electricity straight out of thin air, using nothing but the temperature difference between the inside of your house and the sky above it? No fuel, no moving parts, no solar panels, no wind turbine, just a metal tube, a clever physics trick that's been hiding in plain sight since the 1800s, and a stack of materials so cheap you could buy them with the change in your couch. And here's the part that should make you angry. 31 states have quietly made it almost impossible to install one on a residential property. Not because it doesn't work, because it works too well. Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why your power company would rather you never heard about this, and exactly what's inside that $18 tube that has utility lobbyists writing letters to state legislatures. Let's start with the physics, because this isn't magic and I'm not going to insult your intelligence by pretending it is. The effect we're talking about is called the Seebeck effect, discovered by Thomas Johann Seebeck in 1821. When you take two different metals, join them at both ends, and heat one junction while cooling the other, electrons start flowing, you get voltage, real, measurable, usable voltage. NASA has been using this exact principle to power deep space probes for over 50 years. The Voyager spacecraft, still transmitting data from interstellar space right now as you watch this, runs on thermoelectric generators. Same physics, same principle. The Mars rovers use it, submarines use it, and the modules that do the work, called Peltier or thermoelectric modules, currently sell on Amazon for between $8 and $15 a piece. People in the off-grid subreddit have been quietly experimenting with these for years. One user, going by the handle Backwoods Tinkerer, posted a build log last winter showing his wood stove pipe rigged with 4 modules and a heat sink that produced enough current to keep a 12-volt battery bank topped off through an entire Vermont snowstorm. His comment thread exploded. 380 replies, most asking the same question: why isn't everyone doing this? Here's why. The chimney design takes that lab principle and scales it up using something every house already has: a temperature gradient. The air inside your home, especially if you have any kind of heating, sits around 68 to 72 degrees. The air at the top of a chimney stack, especially in winter, can be 30, 40, even 50 degrees colder. That difference, that delta, is free energy waiting to be harvested. The $18 build that's been circulating on homesteading forums uses a section of standard galvanized stovepipe, a stack of bismuth telluride thermoelectric modules clamped between an inner heat collector and an outer aluminum fin radiator, and a small charge controller you can salvage from any broken solar light. Total parts cost, when sourced carefully, comes in right around $18 to $22, and the output, depending on the temperature differential, ranges from a trickle of 2 watts on a mild day to over 40 watts during a cold snap. That doesn't sound like much until you do the math. 40 watts running 24 hours a day for the 4 coldest months of the year is over 115 kilowatt hours of electricity. Free from a chimney. Now here's where it gets interesting and where the story stops being about physics and starts being about politics. In 2019, a small company in Oregon tried to commercialize a residential thermoelectric chimney unit. They had prototypes, they had buyers, they had a waiting list of over 4,000 homeowners. Within 18 months, they were dead, not because the product failed, because they couldn't get permitting approval in state after state after state. The reason given, almost word for word, in the rejection letters was that the units were not classified under existing electrical generation codes and therefore could not be legally connected to a residential panel. Translation: there's no box on the form for this, so the answer is no. A reporter for a small Pacific Northwest energy blog dug into the lobbying records and found something uncomfortable. In the 18 months leading up to those rejections, 3 of the largest investor-owned utilities in the western United States had spent a combined $14 million on what they called grid stability advocacy. Read the bills they helped write? They specifically excluded passive thermoelectric devices from net metering protections and required any home generation source to go through an inspection process that, on average, costs more than the unit itself. I want you to sit with that for a moment. The technology works, the parts are cheap, the physics is 200 years old and undisputed, and yet in 31 states, you cannot legally install one of these on your roof and tie it into your home's electrical system without going through a process designed, quite literally, to make sure you don't. A user on the homesteading Facebook group, Off Grid and Loving It, posted last spring about his experience trying to get one approved in Tennessee. The inspector told him, and I'm quoting from his screenshot, "This falls outside our jurisdiction. Please contact the State Energy Board." The State Energy Board told him to contact the utility. The utility told him to contact the inspector. He ran in circles for 6 months before giving up and just installing it without grid tie, running it into a separate battery bank that powers his shop, which, by the way, is completely legal in every state. As long as you don't connect it to the main panel, nobody can stop you. And that's the loophole that's quietly turning this into a movement. People are not fighting the system, they're going around it. Search YouTube for thermoelectric chimney generator, and you'll find dozens of build videos with hundreds of thousands of views. The comments are full of electricians, retired engineers, and rural homeowners trading optimization tips. One commenter, a former power plant operator from West Virginia, wrote that he's been running a homemade unit for 3 winters and has cut his propane backup heater usage by 60% because the trickle charge keeps his root cellar fans and well pump running independently. Another user in northern Maine reported that during the ice storm of 2023, when his entire town lost power for 9 days, his chimney unit kept his refrigerator and a single LED lamp running the entire time. His neighbors lost everything in their freezers. He didn't lose a single steak. So what's actually inside the $18 build? The core is 4 bismuth telluride modules, each rated at 15 volts open circuit. They get sandwiched between a copper plate that bolts against the inner wall of the chimney pipe and an aluminum heat sink, finned with strips cut from an old computer cooler. The whole assembly is clamped with stainless hose clamps. The wiring runs through a buck converter, which steps the variable output down to a clean 12 volts and into a basic charge controller feeding a deep cycle battery. That's it. That's the whole device. A reasonably handy person can build it in an afternoon with a drill, a wrench, and a soldering iron. The hardest part isn't the build. It's deciding whether you want to follow the rules that were written specifically to stop you from doing this, or whether you want to take the path that thousands of people are already taking, which is to build it, run it off grid, and quietly enjoy the fact that your chimney is now generating electricity while your neighbors are still writing checks to the power company every month. Here's what I want you to take away from this. The technology to free yourself from a significant chunk of your energy bill has existed for 2 centuries, costs less than a dinner for 2, and is being actively suppressed not by science, but by paperwork. If you found this useful, do me one favor. Share it with someone who heats their home in winter, because the more people who know this exists, the harder it becomes to pretend it doesn't. And I want to leave you with a few more things worth knowing, because the surface story of a cheap chimney gadget barely scratches what's actually happening here. Let's go back to 1821 for a moment. Thomas Johann Seebeck, a Baltic German physicist working in Berlin, noticed that when he joined two different metals into a loop and heated one of the junctions, a compass needle nearby would deflect. He didn't know it at the time, but he had just discovered that a temperature difference across dissimilar conductors generates an electric current. He called it thermomagnetism. He was wrong about the mechanism, but right about the effect. Within 3 years, Hans Christian Ørsted corrected the terminology and named it the Seebeck effect, the same name we still use today. By 1834, a French watchmaker named Jean-Charles Athanasi Peltier had discovered the inverse, that running current through such a junction would either heat or cool it depending on direction. Together, these two effects form the entire theoretical foundation of every thermoelectric generator on Earth, including the ones NASA bolted onto Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 in 1977. Those probes are still transmitting 47 years later, powered by plutonium-238 and the exact same physics sitting inside an $18 chimney clamp. The bismuth telluride alloy that does the heavy lifting was refined for commercial use in the 1950s by Soviet researcher Abram Ioffe at the Leningrad Physical Technical Institute. His 1957 book, Semiconductor Thermoelements and Thermoelectric Cooling, is still cited in nearly every academic paper on the subject. Ioffe predicted that within 20 years, thermoelectric generation would supply meaningful portions of household power across the industrialized world. He was right about the physics. He was wrong about the politics. The American utility model, codified through the Public Utility Holding Company Act of 1935 and reinforced by state-level certificate of convenience and necessity laws passed throughout the 1940s and 1950s, made it functionally illegal for a homeowner to generate and store electricity without inspection, permitting, and in many cases, a direct interconnection agreement with the local monopoly. Those rules predate the technology they now suppress. Consider the numbers a typical wood-burning household actually produces. A standard EPA-certified stove, the kind millions of Americans run from October through March, exhausts flue gases at temperatures between 350 and 700 degrees Fahrenheit during normal operation. A 4-module bismuth telluride array clamped to that pipe with ambient air at 40 degrees on the cold side will generate a sustained 45 to 80 watts. Run that for 10 hours a day across a 150-day heating season, and you've harvested somewhere between 67 and 120 kilowatt hours per winter. That's not enough to run a central air conditioner. It is enough to keep a chest freezer running, charge every phone and laptop in the house, power LED lighting in 3 rooms, and keep a well pump cycling for a homestead. For people in rural Vermont, upstate New York, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and the hollers of West Virginia, that margin is the difference between comfort and crisis when the grid fails in February. And it does fail. The February 2021 Texas blackout killed at least 246 people, most of them from hypothermia, in a state where the average winter temperature rarely drops below freezing. The 1998 ice storm in Quebec and northern New England left 3 million people without power for up to a month. The 2003 Northeast blackout cut electricity to 55 million people across 8 states and Ontario for 2 days. In every one of those events, the households that fared best were the ones with independent heat and independent power. A wood stove with a thermoelectric harvester is precisely that combination in a single appliance for the price of a tank of gas. Now, I want to be fair and address the counter-argument because it exists and it isn't entirely empty. Critics, mostly from the regulatory and insurance industries, point out 3 real concerns. First, an improperly clamped module can interfere with chimney draft, and a chimney that doesn't draft properly can push carbon monoxide back into the living space. That's a genuine danger, and it's why the copper plate must sit against the outer surface of a double wall pipe, never the inner liner. Second, The lithium cells in cheap battery banks have been known to fail catastrophically when charged by uncontrolled DC sources, which is why the buck converter and charge controller in this build aren't optional. Third, modifying any chimney component without inspection can void homeowners' insurance, and in the event of a chimney fire, that's a six-figure problem. None of these objections are arguments against the technology. They are arguments for installing it correctly. A circular saw is also dangerous if you ignore the manual. We don't ban circular saws, we teach people how to use them.